Today, Senator Mike Lee tweeting, if the president cannot convince Congress that the Syrian crisis threatens our national security, military intervention should be off the table. Senator Lee joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you very much, Greta.
What does the president have to do to convince you, sir? What's needed?
Well, he's got to demonstrate to me and other members of Congress that this is in the national security interest of the American people, of Americans themselves. Not just that Mr. Assad is a bad guy. We know that. We know that to be true. But that doesn't justify putting our own people in harm's way. That doesn't justify our own military intervention. He needs to show us that it's actually in our military interest, in our national security interest, that we've got to do this. And I would add to that, he needs to come to Congress and make that case to Congress.
All right, just to play devil's advocate with you in terms of it seems unlikely, at least for a limited strike, that our people would be in harm's way. The question of national security, again, to play devil's advocate with you, is a rather fluid concept. And some might, and if you want to be very fluid about it, you might say that any sort of danger to Israel is in our national security since we are so close to Israel. Or if you have refugees flowing into Turkey, flowing into Jordan, and that has been going on, and that is creating an imbalance or an instability in the region, which has an impact on our national security. National security is a very fluid concept depending on who's arguing for it. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Okay, sure. Maybe there's some fluidity in the concept, but he hasn't even been making that case. I haven't even heard the case for American national security in this. What I've heard is that this violates some abstract international norms. That's all well and good. That's fine for an academic discussion. But, Greta, the use of military force is the most serious exercise of our national sovereignty. And it can't be taken without the support of Congress and without the support of the American people.
One of the things that I would be looking for if I were in Congress, in terms of not just the issue of whether or not it meets some national security test or whether it meets its national security in my mind, but what are we going to achieve by it? That's, I think, is an extremely important thing. So if we go in, we're not looking for regime change, according to the president. So Assad's still going to be there. We're not going to hit the chemical stockpiles for obvious reasons. We don't want to create problems. And we're going to send cruise Tomahawk missiles in there who can't get underground bunkers and can't get moving targets, which are the launchers of those chemical weapons. So what do we hope to sort of achieve at the end of the day? That's what I would demand from the president. Tell me what we're going to get.
Well, that's right. He can't promise us any particular outcome that would make Americans safer. Now, using military force in Syria, just for the sake of maintaining the president's own personal credibility, is simply not a strong enough reason to intervene. And if he can't tell us what victory looks like, and if he can't show us that that victory will make us safer, he has absolutely no business getting our military personnel involved in a conflict, one that could prove very costly, not only in dollars, but in terms of potentially lives, including lives of Americans.
Well, it's not going to be cheap. The room, or at least we're hearing, it'll be 200 cruise missiles at about $1.5 million a piece or be shot. That's just the raw material of the cruise missiles. I don't know if that's remotely close or anything, but I do know that this will be very costly. In the event that the president doesn't get any sort of approval or authorization from Congress, and he does it, he goes ahead and does it like other presidents before have done it. What are you going to do?
Well, I don't know. I will say this. This has come up in town hall meetings that I've been conducting throughout my state, Utah, over the last few weeks. And people throughout my state are really upset about this. They do not want the president going to war without Congress's authorization. And so I'm not sure what the consequence will be, but the consequences will be there. They may come in the form of a funding decision. They may come in some other form. But he will face consequences if he does this.
What's the difference between a cruise missile into Syria and a drone into Yemen?
Well, they're different equipment platforms. I'm not sure what.
I don't mean that, but I mean the whole idea of the authority of the president.
Yeah, well, here what we're talking about, some kind of a military action designed to weaken the military infrastructure of an incumbent government on foreign sovereign soil. And regardless of how you define an act of war, at some point you cross into the threshold of a war when you're trying to topple or at least weaken the incumbent government of a foreign sovereign nation when acting on foreign soil. And that's what he's proposing here in one way or another.
Senator, thank you, sir.